On this episode of the Minutemen Initiative, we're going to be getting into the basics of patrolling. This is a part one of a multi-part series. It's a big topic. It's an important topic, and it's something we really want to break down. So we're going to kind of talk about the outline of patrolling as a whole in this first part, and then in future episodes, we're going to get into it more specifically. So sit back and enjoy the episode.
Feet, my knees, and my back. They are feeling the HESCO barriers from this last weekend. Packing some dirt around. Anyone who hasn't packed HESCOs, you have to get inside of them before you fill them all the way up. So they're barely filled, and you have to get in there and pack out the edges, so that way it actually doesn't just balloon out at the top and is just small down at the bottom.
And for those of you asking right now, what is a HESCO?
Yeah. Well, hopefully most of our audience knows the company HESCO.
Yeah. Basically, if you've ever seen pictures of a combat outpost or a forward operating base overseas, they're the big, galvanized steel cages, and they have a felt bag inside of them, and you fill them up with dirt, and it just creates a barrier. Like a wall. It's basically a fence, a square fence with a bag in it that holds dirt, and once filled becomes a ballistic barrier.
Yeah. They're genius, man. Super simple.
Yep.
I guess the equipment used to build them in mass quantities isn't super simple, but the idea itself is very simple.
Yeah.
And it obviously it's going to be we're using them for our range that we're in the process of building right now.
Yep.
But they save so much space in comparison to just using berms,
Yeah.
If you have, which we have a decent amount of land, but if you have a smaller chunk of land and you're trying to do multiple bays on it, it's kind of a hard option to beat because you're saving so much.
You need about 12 foot for your side containment. I think the actual standard is 8 feet. That's pretty low. Most, when you start dealing with insurance companies and stuff for shooting ranges, they want to see 10 to 12 feet. So I think that 12-foot number is a good number to shoot for your side containment. Well, if you have a 12-foot berm just made out of dirt, it's going to easily be 20 feet at the base. 20, 25 feet.
Yeah, and depending on how you want to do it, you can do them steeper, but you're going to have erosion issues for sure.
Yeah.
So it's people are well, I could do it for way smaller than that. It's well,
it depends on the material you have too.
Yeah.
So that's why we decided to use HESCOs for our range, because the HESCOs we got are a little over 7 foot tall. But we basically built a little basically a little 4 foot. We ended up with 12 foot containment walls. So we built a little berm that's only 8 foot wide at the base, and then the HESCOs are only 3.5 feet wide, but they're 8 feet tall. So yeah. I think they're 7'6" or something, but yeah, once you get those things filled up, you've got a really awesome side containment, basically the berm that you use to divide each of your shooting bays. So you've got that for less than half of what your berm width would have been. So even with those mini berms that they're standing on.
So, and plus they look good.
They look great.
They look
and you
better
can shoot an RPG
at
at them, and they'll just take it and just keep on living. So
yeah, and they look way better than just a simple dirt berm.
Yeah,
So there's guys who build their entire shooting ranges out of them, and it's pretty cool. I've watched a few videos on YouTube, but
yeah, so we're using those at our range. It's going to save space. It's going to keep it really clean, good defined, side containments. I think a lot of ranges that use berms, sometimes it's these really gradual, and over time berms kind of like erode away and like kind of slump down, and so this will be your like these are your side bay, containments.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we're using for our range. We're pretty excited about it. But basically, what you have to do is you have to put a little bit of material in each one. So you stretch them out into like a big long wall. So like the wall we just got done with was a little over 50 yards long, because it's a 50-yard bay that we're working on right now. And yeah, you got to go inside each one, which is a pain because they're like, almost 8 feet tall. So you got to like get a ladder and go inside each one and pack them down, and you got to literally get in there and stomp around. So it wears you out.
Yeah, and you're jumping from little containment to containment, trying to pack them. While your equipment's dumping dirt and trying to work around each other, basically be as efficient as possible. But so yeah, I mean, if you're local and you're wondering if there's ever going to be someone who's going to do a public range, we're doing one. So
yep,
just fair warning. But yeah, let's get right into this thing. What makes patrolling so important? Like, some people from like from the military perspective, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, obviously you're going to patrol. But from like maybe some of our listeners, aren't prior military or aren't whatever, so they're probably wondering like, why would I even care to do that? Like, where is that even needed?
Well, patrolling it's a key part of controlling an area. And I think it's really important to know from a preparedness perspective, it's more proactive. Like, we talk about proactive defense a lot.
Yeah.
And actually, I mean, realistically, if you're working on any of this stuff, you're being proactive about it. Like things from that kind of Minutemen perspective, or things from just like readiness, and it's becoming more common to do things beyond just going to the range and shooting, do things beyond, working on like fast times from concealment or anything like that. People are starting to group together teams, focusing more on coordination, comms, teamwork, field craft, medical, all these different things that we think are pinnacle points of like how you should be prepared. So if you're already doing that, if you're working on those things, those are proactive measures to prepare for, a kind of worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So patrolling is a proactive measure to defend or control, or I guess I should say, or control or maintain an area that you want to either deny access to, kind of bring into your like sphere of awareness or influence, physical influence. So patrolling is super important. I mean, it is an actual active way to go out and deny or just completely stop any kind of offensive or anything like that. So, a lot of people think self-defense starts at the threshold of their door,
Yeah.
And then there's another perspective, which is kind of where patrolling comes in, where no, defense of your home or defense of your community should start on the outskirts of your community. You should extend that out.
And why wait for them to get to like what you see as valuable?
Yeah.
I mean, kind of, like certain lines of, well, like depending on what it is, like certain measures, like if you're defending your home, obviously there's legal laws against like just shooting someone before they've actually like entered your threshold. But
yeah,
we're talking more from whether it's, disaster related or, economic collapse, whatever it may be,
Yeah.
Where you don't really have a like law enforcement that's active.
Yeah.
Or if they are active, they're strung thin or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Yeah, no. It is a physical way to go out and see what's going on and to maintain your area, and control it, keep it under your control, and be proactive about, having a presence. It's not just like waiting inside your stronghold or whatever the case may be. I mean, you look back at the historical side of it, our kind of whole theme is like modern day Minuteman. You look back at the original Minutemen, and they had measures in place, early warning measures, patrols. They were, it was more of a passive patrol, but they had guys that were outside of the community that was, prepared, that were early warning. They were patrolling. They were out. They were, kind of had an outside perimeter in place. And like Paul Revere is like one of the most famous, running back into town saying the British are coming,
Yeah.
So he was out beyond the community and was able to come back in time to alert everyone. And that is a very simplistic kind of view and or method of like a patrol of a way to patrol. And it can be done in a much more proactive way. But it's extremely important. I think so many people focus on like, kind of going back to like defending your community is such a big part. And that's kind of what I feel like if you're working towards this stuff, you're the type of person that has compassion. You're the type of person that has empathy for those that need help. You're the kind of person that knows that you might be better fit, or you would like to be the person at least that's better fit to deal with these things, so like your family doesn't have to.
Yeah.
And instead of just focusing on like, okay, we're going to tuck away in our, community, or, we're meeting at this buddy's house and we're going to all like commune live together, or whatever your plan is, it's like, that's great, but we believe you need to have proactive measures in place of like, this is where we're going to be, but we're only going to let people get to this point.
Yeah.
This is our actual line of like, no one
set up boundaries.
This far. Yeah. And that's done through physically patrolling that area. It can be used for, reconnaissance missions as well. Like we, have podcasts talking about reconnaissance, and it's more, long-term kind of like observational reconnaissance, but you can do like patrolling reconnaissance, which we'll get into in a little bit, but that's like one of the big ones. But you can use it to find stuff out about your area. That's basically what you're doing through reconnaissance.
And if you remember from the last podcast, that would be area reconnaissance.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of falls into that. So, and that would be in like a patrolling form. It can be. And people are probably, for me, it's like, oh, okay, well, why would I have to like look into that? Why would I have to train for that? It sounds like it's a really simple task, but there's so much that goes into patrolling as well. Like as far as like being good at it, not being seen, and actually doing what you're supposed to be doing, head on a swivel, like actually paying attention, not just walking through the woods.
Yeah. Not getting killed.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're just out there walking, like just a walk, you're going to get smoked. I mean, that's...
Yeah, especially if you're going on, like you said, patrolling can be a multiple day thing. It could be it could be a multiple month thing. That would suck, but it could be,
Yeah.
But when you're tired and you haven't eaten much and you haven't slept much, and you're worn out, you've been physically drained, it's hard to stay like motivated enough to keep doing your tasks. So,
yeah, for sure. Yeah. So as far as, from a civilian perspective, like why should you focus on patrolling? Well, because I think it's an absolutely critical part of having a good defensive structure. And if you're doing things right and you've got a good coordinated effort behind everything that you're doing, patrolling should just be part of that. It should be an integral part of that.
Yeah.
So we're going to break it down. We're going to start talking about the basics. This is a part one. Patrolling is a deep topic. It's just, much like reconnaissance. Reconnaissance it's funny because that's funny we did that episode first, because patrolling is like used in reconnaissance.
Yeah.
So It is what it is.
We're excited about the topic, so
yeah.
we just jumped right into it.
We're never going to be able to have like a perfect order of things, because before this we should probably have a full podcast on formations,
Yeah.
So, which we probably will at some point, but it is what it is. But anyways, I think this is a super important part, and it's something that you should implement into your training routine. And if you've got a team of guys that you work with, patrolling should be something that you actively work on.
Yeah, you need to put yourself kind of like what I was talking about earlier, where you're physically drained, you're tired, and you're hungry. You have to put yourself through those tasks. That's like, so many guys go down to Ranger School and go through that leadership course. I'm putting up air quotations because, it is a leadership course. It's like one of the best leadership courses in America is what they say, like second best or something.
Yeah.
But that is a course that you actually get put through all that, and you get put through that for, the shortest is 3 months. If you get recycled, then you potentially are down there for longer, so
yeah,
you're down there doing the thing for quite a bit of time, and it's pretty much all about patrolling. Like, that is what you do.
Yeah.
The whole time.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And different, scenarios and whatnot. And you're getting mixed up on like what leadership positions you're in. So, it's very important, and it really like tests your grit. And it also, long story short, I'm just saying, like, go out into the field if you got a group of people you train with, and actually like do a multiple night thing where you're actually kind of pushing people past their limits a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound too like hoorah here, but if you're not doing that, then you're not ready. If you're just going to the range and shooting, and we've been saying this, I bring this up a lot. Like, I brought it up last time in the last podcast about being, responding with like a first responder kind of medical response mindset. We talked about that in our last one, and in there, I made the comment about like, how it's about more than just going and shooting on the range. I want to make it very clear that Steven and I think that's absolutely vital. Like, you need to be doing that. But the reason I keep bringing this up is because if you're listening to this podcast, you already are. Like, I feel like your odds are, if you're here listening to us ramble on about patrolling, you're probably someone that's already been going to the range. You're probably someone that prioritizes going and getting better at shooting. For the last several years, you've had tons of people come out, influencers, companies, Instagram personalities, whatever, and put forth the emphasis on going and shooting, getting fast, pushing yourself to the absolute limit, getting better.
Doing it more than in one ability, doing it from concealment, doing it with a handgun, doing it from, rifle, doing it, all the different ways that you plan to carry a rifle you're training with, whether that's just concealment or that's, running a truck out of a gun or running a gun out of a truck. Whoa.
Dude, what kind of gun do you have? That's crazy.
Dude, the best.
Yeah. Running a gun out of a truck.
It's the new Javelin. It actually launches a truck out of it.
Nice.
You'll see him in Ukraine sooner or later.
No, but exactly. So I just want to make that clear that we think that's important, but here's the big but. That is such a small part. That's such a small part of the puzzle. And I don't want to say it's unimportant, because it's not. Having good marksmanship and being a master of the weapons you use is extremely important, and you should focus on it. But in some ways, it is secondary to some of these other things. How many guys did you serve with in the military that were fantastic soldiers, but they were crappy shots?
I would say probably, like, if I was going to be very Josh-like and just throw a percentage down.
just a mental percentage somehow.
Dude, it's not very high. Like, it's like, if I would say 80% were bad shots. Not bad shots, but just not like.
But would be bad if you're the kind of person that goes to the range all the time, you would go shooting with these guys and be like,
and I would say suck. I'm giving that percentage. Like, I'm being nice with that percentage.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Like that 20% that I'm saying is good shots. It's like they're all right shots.
Yeah. But I guarantee you would take those guys over somebody that shoots on the flat range every day.
Yeah, I'm pretty much taking all those guys again.
Yeah.
But that's because, the bonds and stuff like that you form from going out and dealing with the suck.
Yeah.
And actually, going out in the field, everyone knows pretty much, but I come from a reconnaissance background. Like going out in a serve site and a hide site and just sucking for days upon days.
Yeah.
And having the discipline to, not be caught, even though you're just out of water and out of food and you're just hating life.
Yeah.
And it's 100 and something degrees out, and that's not including humidity, and you're in full kit. It's like, dude, it takes a certain level of, I don't know,
resilience.
Yeah.
Because it's true adversity. Like, I think so many people do the easy things. What are the easy things? Buying gear is easy. I talk about it all the time. It's easy to buy gear. Yeah, it costs money. If it's stuff you like, you're going to spend money on it.
Yep.
Like, the stuff's fun. You see your favorite Instagram influencer doing it, or you see like some company that you're super into, like posting gear and running all this stuff, and oh yeah, you need this, you need that. So you buy it, and it's like, man, I've really sacrificed a lot. I've bought this gear. It's like, no, you bought something you wanted. We're a consumer society.
Yeah.
It's the
like
same.
You would have spent it on something else.
Yeah.
If you didn't like that. It's not like you sacrificed something.
Yeah. So that's easy. What else is easy? Going to the range. It's easy to go to the range. You load up,
it's fun.
You bring your gear, you get to go shoot, you laugh, you joke around, you're not breathing hard usually. Or if you do, it's for short periods of time. You get to push yourself, but it's fun. It's rewarding.
It's in a controlled environment too. Like
Yep.
you can choose, it's a rainy day, let's just go shooting tomorrow.
Yeah.
Let's push this off to tomorrow because I don't want to be out in the rain and be miserable.
Or here, it's like, oh man, it's -20. Let's just not go. Or like, let's go and let's sit in a shack with a stove running. It's like, that's not adversity.
That's raisin box.
Yeah. It's not adversity. That's not hard. That's a Saturday morning, and I'm not saying this to disparage anyone. Don't get your little feelings hurt. This is just the reality. It's like, if you're working towards this stuff,
hurts someone's feelings, then they need to just, I don't know.
They need to go out and do this stuff we're talking about. If you're not physically working towards this, and there's a lot more than, it's not just, this has kind of turned into a rant, a bigger picture rant, and it's going to be reoccurring because I see it time and time again, even within people I know, like, well, it's like,
yep.
You can read all the things that you can look stuff up. You can sit here and listen to this podcast. You can watch 1,700 YouTube videos. You can watch every single Grantham video and take notes all the way through it, or listen to the whatever podcast. You can listen to Steven's rumble burp happen on the microphone. That thing sounded crazy.
I don't know if it got caught, but now it's been caught because you called me out.
I think you pulled away fast
I tried
enough.
to back it out because I was like, whoa.
He sounded like he was purring.
Dude, it was crazy. It was in my throat.
You were like, oh.
You can listen to Steven's rumble.
Oh, anyways, that's fantastic. And I'm not saying don't do this stuff, but take the knowledge you're learning and implement it. Go out and get your gear on. If it's raining, it doesn't matter. Go into the woods. Take your team. Go out into the woods. Spend the night. Spend multiple nights out there. Yeah, there's going to be crappy times, but it's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to have a lot of fun. This stuff takes that kind of level of effort. You have to go out. Like, working on patrolling isn't something you can just go do. I mean, you can be like, all right, we're going to pick today. Like we recently did it. You can go out and be like, we're going to spend a few hours in the woods, smashing around, talking about different things, patrol bases, stuff like that, which are all things we'll get into on the podcast. We'll try to give you the base. Today's going to be basic stuff, and I promise we'll get into it here in a second. But you can go out and you can do that stuff. Spend short sections on it, which I think you should at first. I think you should go out. You should work on these things. You should do your research. Make sure you're doing it right. Understand formations, understand hand and arm signals, know how to move quietly, know how to move without talking, understand, how to use your radios when you're out as a team, using good camouflage considerations so you're not just like sticking out like a sore thumb. Understanding your environment. Are you urban? Are you rural? Are you in the woods? Are you in the streets? All these things. That's good stuff to work on. You can spend a few hours every weekend, getting out with your guys and doing that. But until you go out and you intentionally put yourself in crappy, tiresome, just annoying situations where you're actually like, you're starting to question, like, why am I out doing this right now? Like, that is...
I think you get that on, for Alaskans, I think people experience that on hunts.
On hunts, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think you get to experience that, why?
Yeah.
Why am I doing this? Is this worth a piece of, not a piece. I was going to say a piece of meat, but it's a little more than a piece of meat. But
yeah,
is this worth an animal? Which usually in the end it is worth the animal.
And that's why you stay.
Get one.
That's why you stay. You've found that. You found the light at the end of the tunnel. You found that thing that makes the adversity worth it. You're like, okay, this sucks. I could just load up in my truck and bail. But it's finding that importance that keeps you from doing that. And you need to find that for this kind of training. If you're working on this and you've got a group of guys and let's say you want to work on patrolling, you need to go out and plan an event. I think you need to go out and plan an event instead of, just maybe sacrifice one weekend where you're going to do a big range thing and say, hey, how about we go out on that same Saturday, but we plan on spending the night and we'll come back early Sunday morning or whatever it ends up being. And let's get everybody out there. You learn a lot doing that, even if you just go out, but try to move, in a way that makes sense. And you don't have to be super strict, but just starting there.
Some of it could just be learning, there's been times where me and Jacob have gone out and it's like, okay, this is going to be very what's a good word for it? But almost not administrative, but where we're just basically breaking down the basics. It's like, okay, yeah, we made it here. We were pretty quiet, but let's actually talk about things we could do better and things that we may want to look out for and things like that. So
yeah,
if you have people within your group that, have, honestly, military experience, you get a ton of this. If you're infantryman, if you're something, that's actually out in the field and working on this besides just your AIT time frame. Because, that's just the truth. If you're, depending on your MOS, the only time you were really out in the field was when you were in AIT or basic training or whatever, so
yeah.
Where most infantry guys, that's pretty much all you do. For field operations, you're just out in the field, just smashing around.
Yep.
So, use their information because they got a lot of it. And some of it might have to be kind of peeled back up because they haven't been using a ton of it. But
yeah,
it's still there, we have that happen all the time where we're like, oh, actually, yeah, we've done this before. It's been a while. Let me kind of knock off the rust a little bit. But
yeah. No, for sure. And with the, on that, you don't have to have, ex-military dudes in your group.
No, I'm just saying if you have them, use them.
Oh yeah, absolutely use them. I see a lot of that. That's a rant for a different time, but there's a lot of negative, I've noticed a lot of negative and veterans have done it to themselves, but I've noticed a lot of negative influence on if they're a vet, just don't listen to what they say because they're very entrenched in their ways or, and that kind of thing. And that is self-inflicted. That comes from our community. That comes from the veteran community. Guys being super full of themselves and guys being super arrogant and doing the classic, you don't know anything kind of thing. And I think that's stupid. But there's legitimately guys out there that want to teach and they want to learn as well. So if you've got good guys that have some experience, never knock experience, that's
even if it's old experience, it's the guys who served in the 90s and stuff, and that's all they got. They didn't really get much true, combat time, but they still had to go out and deal with the suck, and they still got lots of training.
They had to go out and deal with crap, and also anytime they went out and like trained, they were fighting themselves.
Yeah.
That's something that I think a lot of people forget. It's like, you know, because there's a lot of influence put on like, well, that guy didn't deploy, or, you know, oh yeah, you know, the military guys like, well, all they did was like, you know, go out and just do a bunch of random training. It's like, no, yeah, they went out and put this stuff to work. It was just second nature. Like that was their job, was to go out and do this stuff. And they were going out and fighting the best fighting force you could fight, which was themselves, you know?
Yeah.
And
they were doing it constantly. Like that was their job.
Yeah.
Like where if we could afford to do that, we would do that because that would be fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Because I hear that a lot too. I hear like, well, you know, if you, especially now, it's come up a lot with Ukraine. It's like, well, going and fighting a bunch of farmers in Afghanistan was one thing, but you know, if you were actually fighting Russia or something, and it's like, yeah, that's true. Which I always find that argument kind of funny because I've had that come up. It's like, well, yeah, you know, but what do you think about what's going on? And like conversations will kind of crop up from it. And it's like, well, you know, you guys had the benefit of only having to fight, you know, like
a third world country,
unorganized insurgents.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, oddly enough, or ironically, I should say, our military is much better suited at fighting a conventional fighting force than it is at fighting insurgencies.
Yeah. Look at the Geneva Convention. It like pretty much like makes it way easier to fight someone who actually has a uniform on.
Yeah. So there's that. And then also you got to take into consideration that like, it's not like when we were in, we never got experience fighting a conventional force because that's what you train for.
Yeah.
And you fight the best conventional force in the world, which is the U.S. military. That's who you train to fight. You know, like when you fight Op 4, it's you know, it's another unit. Like you literally, there's units in the military, at least in the Army, that their job is to fight you.
It's like it's like the argument, you know, that people make. Oh, well, you know, like back in the early 2000s, they're like, well, the Patriots division was super weak, so like that's why they could always dominate. Like they never had to play anyone hard. It's like, well, they played
football.
Yeah, I'm talking about football.
Yeah,
it's like they played someone hard every time they went to practice because they had to play themselves.
Yeah,
and that's why they were so good. It's because they sat there and played themselves over and over again. So that when they got to the championship, they were hard to beat. Like,
yeah,
they got to play against each other. Yeah, they had a weak division, but it doesn't matter because even when they played good people that were coming to play them in the Super Bowl, they still dominated them.
Yeah,
it's because they sat there and played themselves the whole time.
Yeah. So, you know, with that being said, if you're fortunate enough to have dudes that are around that aren't super full of themselves and aren't a bunch of turds,
yeah, and want to continue to learn, like,
yeah, then put them to work, get the experience.
Me and Jacob say that all the time. Like, we're not perfect. Like, some of the things we talk about, it's, you know, we're not the best at. Like, we you know, we have lives. You know, we can't just be out in the field all the time just training. We have a business to run. We got stuff to do that we have to do. You know, we have kids. We both have kids, and you know, sometimes life doesn't let you do it. But you know, the attempts there. You know, like we are actively attempting to go out and better ourselves and better the people we work with and better our community.
Yeah.
So, and that's what this podcast is for, is to better everyone that listens to us. You know, we want to just encourage people to be what this country was founded on. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole point of this. And that's why we got back into this thing so strong. Like we were like, all right, one release a week. Cause our old podcast, it was like, it used to be one every other week. And that went on for like a few months, and then it turned into like one every few months, you know, and then it was like we had like a year span between a couple episodes, you know. So
anyways, all this to say, let's get into patrolling because we're going on the ooh-rah.
Well, yeah. So one other thing I wanted to say really quick, what I was trying to get to was, if you've got these guys, lean on their experience, ask them questions, come up with questions that, you know, maybe they're dumb questions, but just like anything, you know, I don't believe there are dumb questions. If you don't know, you don't know. And don't get so hung up on what you're worried about not knowing. I see that a lot too.
Yeah.
Be willing to ask. And then also, if you are a military guy, be willing to teach. Don't have this superiority complex of like, well, if we were actually getting shot at, you guys, no, like just calm down. Especially if you've got like, I mean, obviously if you're working with a group of people, then you're probably someone that cares, but you don't need to be like Mr. like I have all the answers guy. People, it's awesome having different perspectives. And there's a lot of guys that have never done any military anything that have really cool perspectives. Like we've had questions come up in our like group training and stuff. That's like, man, that's a great question. And it was just, from a non-biased perspective, like someone with no background at all.
Yeah, sometimes you get your best questions that way, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because they're coming at it with like such a fresh perspective, I guess.
Yeah.
Like it's like
almost
that's
like
such
an
a good
innocent
question.
perspective.
Yeah, almost. And sometimes it's like, I don't know the answer to that, so I'm going to have to look into that. Like, let's research it. Let's all research and see what we can find. Which is also great about a group. You got that many more people like working on different stuff. Like, especially if like we talked about in the radio podcast, like if you're passionate about radio, it's like, be the guy. Be the guy who's trying to figure stuff out for your group.
Yeah.
If you're passionate about medical, be the guy.
Yep.
If you're passionate about land nav, be the guy.
Yep. If you're like if you're a hunter, you've been hunting for years and you're out in the woods all the time because you love it, you're going to know a ton of cool stuff about fieldcraft and little simple tips that just make you more comfortable out there that, some military
just
guys
some
might
things
not
that
even know.
Some things you may not even pay attention that you know. You know what I mean? Like that's another thing I've noticed with myself sometimes. It's like, because we did it in a professional spectrum, like some of the things I just think are like so simple and just like, not that it's like easy, but just something I overlook.
It's just second nature to you.
Yeah, it's like I just you almost feel like that's just like a natural instinct when it's really not.
And then you go out and you start working on something,
and then you notice something, and you're like, oh wait, we need to talk about this because you start seeing like everyone doing it, and you're like, oh no, all right, break guys, let's we're gonna have a little group discussion.
Yeah. Now. Dang, I didn't even think about that, but that's something we need to go over. I got smacked for that in basic training on week 1,
Yeah, exactly.
And you forgot because it's something that you've never done since then. But the other thing to end this rant with is, if you don't, like I said, you don't need, I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. You don't need military guys. You don't. That's the beauty of this whole thing, is that anyone can do this stuff. Anybody can. It's, like, trust me, anybody can. I mean, I've served with super intelligent people and I've served with some super not intelligent people.
Yeah.
And anybody can do this. That's the beauty of this country, is that you should be able to do it with no repercussions. All this stuff, being ready, being prepared, training, working on it, it's all part of it. It's all part of what's covered under our freedoms, and it's inalienable. It's stuff that we just have. Like, we have the inalienable right by God to defend ourselves and our family. And so you don't need a military guy. And if you are a group of civilians that are out there trying to get stuff done and get things figured out and train and put in the work, and you're getting information from podcasts or blogs or YouTube videos, whatever, that's so sick. And I'm stoked about it. And I'm like proud of you. Go out there and put it to work. Go out there, sweat.
Yeah, because just because it worked for Grantham doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Like, there's plenty of things that I've seen within myself and within our group. Like, oh man, I saw this guy running this way, so I'm going to try it. And then they get out on the field and they're like, dude, this is the most annoying thing. It keeps rubbing me in this area. Like, it's just pissing me off.
Yep.
And you wouldn't know that. You would just go out. I mean, obviously it's something that can be fixed pretty quickly, but still, I mean, like, you can find the way to set up your gear or set up whatever it may be, based off of actually going out and testing it. Because then you can find out, okay, this actually works for me.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work for you, then it's just because, there's things that I'm like, man, that seems like it should work. Like, it seems so it seems so perfect. But then you try it and you're like, man, it's not working for me at all.
This sucks.
Like, I'm trying to wear my pants this way and I'm just chafing like a son of a gun or whatever. Like, I don't know how you wear your pants different, but
yeah. And or there's gear that like you buy and you're super excited about it. And then you actually start running it through its paces and you're like, dang it, this was a loss. You're just really rooting for it to be good. Yeah.
I spent a lot of money on this.
Yeah, and yeah, don't force things to work just because you spent money on it. That's a whole other topic. But so, anyways, getting into patrolling. We'll
seemed like a rant, but it actually all is involved in patrolling.
It is
like by going out and doing patrolling, you learn a lot of the stuff we just talked about.
Yeah,
like, get out there, do it. You'll find out if your gear works for you. Like that's the easiest way to find out if gear is going to work.
Going out on a patrol is one of the best ways to implement a lot of skills into one task. Like going out and walking through the woods, and like, you know, it can be as simple as like, all right, guys, let's pull up Google Earth and let's get a little map. Look at a little map. You should have maps. You know, there's a lot of good websites for printing out maps.
Yeah.
We're going to absolutely do a navigation podcast because it's such a rich topic and it's so important. You know, being able to know where you are without any kind of technology to aid you, I think is super important. But anyways, topic for a different time. Even if you just pull up like, you know, Google Earth on your phone, and you're like, okay, we're going to go from this point to this point, guys. And then
and we've done
there's
that
this thing here. Yeah. And then like, hey, there's this thing here. I don't know what this is. I've always seen it on the map. I've never been there. Let's go see what this is. And let's go. That's the mission. We're going to patrol over here and we're going to take a look at this thing, and then we're going to patrol out and we're going to record everything we see along the way. That's all it has to be. You just go out and do that, and you work on movement, you work on spacing, and you work on formations and all these things we're going to start to talk about here shortly. Dude, you will get so much value out of that. So much. And you know, you can do it in like a few hours. Yeah. So, and then if you can, you know, implement that overnight side of it. If you have the time to take like a few nights, you know, that's stuff that we want to try to do this year with, you know, some of the people we work with. Is
we
like,
actually got one planned soon. So,
yeah, go out and, you know, and have fun with it. Like, it's going to be fun. We're going to make it fun. We're going to do fun things there. Like, I'm not saying you need to go out. It needs to be super serious the whole time. It needs to suck, and you need to just like it.
No, you need to learn. Like, if you're just going out there and being miserable the whole time, like, yeah, there is lessons learned from misery.
Oh yeah,
but, yeah, you want it to be something that, like, especially if you got guys who are a little bit newer to it and whatnot, you don't want to just break them off right out the gate, like,
yeah,
because.
Like, dude, I'm not going on that with those guys ever again.
Yeah, those guys are turds. And you're not, like, bounded by a contract like you are in the Army, where it's not like you can just, like, leave.
Right. You
can actually leave.
Yeah.
A group that you're training with. You can just be like, yeah, these guys are crazy.
That's why you carpool. You have... You carpool out there and...
You're getting in with me.
Yeah. Have the most hardcore guy take his vehicle. Everyone carpools out in that. And then it's like, no, we're not done. I'll tell you when we're done. I'm just kidding.
Or you just take a deuce and a half like we do.
Yeah. So, okay. So, breaking down some basics of patrolling. Again, part 1, outline. Outline of patrolling. What is it? How do you do it? How do you prepare for it? What do you do along the way? And then in part 2, we'll probably get into more specifics when you're out on the patrol, maybe some gear considerations, stuff like that. So there's basically 5 basics of controlling: planning, reconnaissance.
Did you say patrolling or controlling?
Patrolling.
Oh,
Papa, Alpha.
Almost sound like controlling
Tango,
just now.
Romeo, Oscar, Lima, India, November, Golf. Anyways, planning. Here's the 5 basics: planning, reconnaissance, security, control, and common sense. So that's kind of how we're going to outline this topic today. So again, you've got planning, reconnaissance, security, control, and common sense. So those are your 5 essential pieces of patrolling. And this is based on, you know, kind of a military standard, more specifically the Army. You know, Steven and I have Army backgrounds, so take that for what it is. But these are... What?
I don't know. It's funny.
These are just good essential essential things to have to set up a patrol, and it'll give you a good kind of foundation to build off of. So starting with planning. Planning, in my opinion, is the most important part. I think if you don't have a good plan, you're already setting yourself up for failure. So an acronym that you'll hear often, especially if you've been in the military, you're probably going to roll your eyes super hard at this. You probably already know it's coming, but it's METTC.
Oh, yeah.
METTC is a super solid, very good acronym. What in the world's going on here? Sorry, my notes just decided to glitch out on me. Anyways, METTC is a really good acronym to use to start a plan. Now, what does METTC stand for? Well, first of all, it's METT-TC. It's like the most acronym I've ever seen in my life. METTC. It's just ridiculous. That's the most Army acronym I've ever seen in my life. So M stands for mission, E stands for enemy, T stands for terrain and or weather. The other T stands for troops, and the last T stands for time available. And then the C stands for civilians or considerations. So, in a nutshell, what does that all mean? Well, mission. So, you start with M. And this is why it's a really good acronym, because it kind of breaks down everything you need to think about before you plan something. And this can be, so METTC is not just for patrolling.
No, it's for pretty much all walks of life.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it.
Yeah. You can apply it to your marriage. You can apply it. No.
I mean, you could.
Yeah, you actually could. It's actually used in like leadership, like civilian. It's often used in like civilian leadership trainings and stuff like that, which is pretty funny.
Is it really?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Dude, I think I would laugh if I was like at some like
I would die.
Weird corporate thing and you're like, and then they're just like, all right, let's talk about METTC. And
yeah.
You're just like, wait, whoa.
No, I've literally heard speeches where it's like, the military uses an acronym called METTC, and they break it down, and like you can tell the audience is like, this is so epic, and you're just sitting there like, no, dude, this is so dumb. But anyways, so here comes. So mission. Okay, so what are you trying to do? Are we trying to go investigate something? Are we setting up a defensive perimeter? Are we denying access? Like, what is the mission? Enemy. So who's there? What do we know? Are we, is it like looters? Is it like an actual conventional fighting force that has taken over your area? Like in Ukraine, well, who's their enemy? Well, it's Russian forces, and they're having to defend their country. Is it something like that? Is it a supply chain issue and people are starting to panic and you've got like kind of warlord mentalities that are kind of standing up their own level of defense? Is it oppression? Is it like oppressive police? What is it? Who's the enemy? And are they there? Are there enemies in your immediate area? Do you know where they are, how they're operating, how they're moving? Are they actively trying to find you, or are they just passively in the area?
Yeah.
So, the first T is terrain and weather. What kind of terrain are you working with? Are you in the mountains? Are you like near a lake system? Are you in San Francisco? Are you in a giant urban
and
location?
This is gonna kind of dictate what your packing list is gonna be, comms, different things like that, because we talked about radio waves don't push through everything and anything. Yep. So you got to take that into consideration. You can hide that way too, depending on the terrain.
Yeah. And weather's right there, which also dictates your packing list. Is it pouring the rain? Is it November in Alaska and you have like 3 feet of snow and it's, 15 degrees?
You're going to want snowshoes, probably.
Yeah.
In that situation, because otherwise you're going to die.
Are you in the South and you just had a hurricane come through and it's super flooded and rainy and you're trying to, keep all of your local community from getting like looted and robbed?
Zodiac boats. No, but seriously, look at Texas when they had that huge flood. Like everyone was just cruising around on their boats, dude.
Yeah,
actually pretty sweet.
The next one is troops. How many people do you have? What's your personnel? What does your mission require? What literally is even more simple. What do you actually have to work with? And that's more realistic, I think, for this kind of stuff. Probably small unit stuff, probably don't have big teams. I would say, right around that 5-person mark is a more realistic for most people. If you've got more than that, that's awesome. But, between 4 and 6 people is going to be pretty common. You could have more. If you have like 8 to 10, that's great, but
you could have less.
There might be 2 of you, 2 or 3, it might just be you, hey. Which, on that, try to get a team, try to coordinate with others.
That's if you're on your own prior.
Yeah. I hate to say it, but if you're solo, you're unless you're able to live somewhere super remote on your own for long periods of time, you're probably not going to make it.
But Rambo did it.
Yeah. So how many people do you have? What do you need? What's their status? Are they all healthy? Are you well fed? Are you hydrated? Things like that. Time available is the final T. How much time do you have? It's as simple as that. How long is it going to take? How long is this mission supposed to take? Are you going to have standards in place for, hey, if we don't make it back by this time, send some help, or, that's where your contingencies start to come in. And then civilian considerations. This is more kind of from a military perspective, but it still applies. Basically, all this means is who else is in the area, and this is kind of a blanket thing too. It's not just for civilians. It's besides you and your enemy, who else is around that you need to be made aware of? Who are you trying to protect? Who are you not sure about? It's just other people and or things in the area that you need to know about that would give you beneficial information. Is there going to be people out there, just depending on what the situation is, if it's like kind of a dystopian society and things are like collapsed, and are you going to have looters? Is there going to be people like starving out there that you might be able to help, things like that. Having that stuff figured out and in place. So that's it. That's METTC, and you can see it just on its own. I mean, it could honestly just about be its own podcast, because you could break those things down super in depth and really go on them, I think. But starting with that, I think, is such a great way to plan, and it's just a good foundation, and then you can start to build off of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like after going through it, I mean, you can use it in more things than just, you could use it in your marriage. We joked around about it, but you actually could.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, and any of this stuff, like, any of the stuff we've talked about, METTC is going to be something that should be pivotal in your planning.
Yeah, I mean, that's like your pre-mission briefing should have. It's an easy way to break down your pre-mission briefing. Like if you're setting it up, if you're kind of like the guy who does the administrative portions of your trainings and stuff like that, it's an easy way to be like, okay, let's make sure we've made all these considerations prior to going in. That way there's not something that's not briefed, or, it's an easy way to it's like an outline.
Yeah.
For a briefing, honestly.
And it makes it easier to come across something that you're not ready for, because it lessens the chances of you coming into something that catches you off guard or catches you by surprise. Or those things are going to be so specific and unique to like your area and what you're doing that you might have been able to prepare for them in a different way.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting into types of patrols. You've got standing patrols, which is like more static. This is going to be like your observation posts, or like just static positioning, or like maybe a listening post, different things like that. Like you have set up on a perimeter and you're going to be there and you're going to deny access, whether it be like through a, like a checkpoint.
Is it almost like preemptive? Would you say that's like almost like a, there's not really a set goal necessarily, I guess, or there is a set goal, I guess, but there's.
Yeah, well, it. I mean, there could be a lot of goals, but it like, I guess in a way, your reconnaissance, like your serve site, could be a standing patrol. Generally, though, they're more hasty. It's like you're able to maneuver quickly out of it. You're gonna go there, set up, come back, kind of thing.
Okay.
You know? Then there's something called a screening patrol, and it's basically going in and, it could kind of go in line with like a reconnaissance patrol, which we'll get into a little bit, but it's, basically checking an area. It's passing through. It's usually done like quickly. Could be vehicle borne. Screening patrols are often vehicle borne. So, basically like screening over an area, and, you could have, checkpoints set up. It might be mixed in with different standing patrols. Could be a mixture of things, but basically exactly what it sounds like. You're screening the area.
It's basically what was happening in Afghanistan.
Yeah. Pretty much all of our patrols were
screening
patrols. Making sure the area that we already had control of were staying sterile, making sure we maintained control.
Yeah, because
of
it was such a big footprint that America was kind of, I don't know, policing, I guess.
Yep.
So,
yeah, and actually a lot of like squad car patrolling is screening patrol. It's driving around, seeing anything out of place, making stops, checking on stuff. You're screening. You're screening people, screening things, screening obstacles, trying to figure out what's going on with that kind of stuff. Then you've got a clearing patrol, which is a little more proactive. A clearing patrol is going in to clear out an enemy or clear out an obstacle. Like, that, hey, we've got something here that we do not want in our immediate area of operations. We're going to go clear it out.
Yeah, it's more almost like an assault.
Yeah.
So definitely more proactive.
Yep. And then right along with that is a combat patrol, which is like squad attacks. It's going to be very like pinpointed. We're going to go in and we're going to take out a specific enemy. We know that there's an enemy here. They need to be out of this area. We need to regain control of this part of our area of operation, which is often referred to as AO. If you hear any of us say AO, that stands for area of operation. So
yeah,
it's the area you want to control. So yeah, combat patrol, like you're loading up, and all these things too dictate what you're going to bring. For a combat patrol, you're definitely armored up fully. You're going in, you got a ton of ammo. You're going to hit the objective or hit that enemy wherever, setting up an ambush, however you're going to plan on doing it, through METTC. You're going to plan it through METTC to kind of figure out the best way to go about it.
Yeah, same with the clearing patrol, because more than likely you're going in with the intent to destroy at that point. So
yeah,
it's definitely a little bit more offensive versus defensive forms of patrolling, like where your screening patrol is kind of in between. You're almost kind of a little bit more defensive, but you're a little bit offensive because you're going out and you're doing it. I mean,
and you're
in
ready.
A way, patrolling's offensive in a way, but it's like playing defense with offense.
Yeah,
I guess
it's like special teams.
Yeah,
no, but so your screening patrol is going to be more like, all right, we've got this area on lock. We're going to maintain it. So we're going to do constant screening patrols.
Yep.
And you'll probably have some standing patrols set up too. And then the final one is reconnaissance patrolling. Which again, reconnaissance, it's the main mission there is to figure out what's in the area. You want to know who's there, what's there, how
are they there?
Yep. Why are they there? What are they using? It's more about getting intelligence. Maybe you have an area that you think might be better for your community to be in, and you're thinking about moving your community elsewhere, and you need to go in there and figure out, like, is this really where we want to go? So let's run we don't think there's any enemies here as far as we know, but let's
and what are the weaknesses? Like, how many entry points? Is it easy to get into? Is it just pretty common sense stuff, I guess.
Yep. So yeah, those are your types of patrols. And you can use any mix of those. I mean, obviously your clearing and your combat are a little more offensive in nature, and then your reconnaissance is more about information gathering, and then your screening and standing are more defensive. So
for like the I guess, everyday civilian, like what? I mean, I guess you use all of them.
Yeah, and it depends on. Again, it goes back to. Hate to sound like an old military guy, but it goes back to MET-TC. Like, what's the mission? Like, what's going on? What kind of enemy do you have? You know, I think most of the time it's not smart to. I think people get tunnel visioned in on like the offensive side of things, like direct action stuff.
Yeah,
and you see kit reflected in that way a lot. People buy, fast helmets, and like they have like, plate carriers and inline gear, like.
Which is obviously important depending on what your mission is.
Oh, for sure. But I think more realistically, if you were dealing with an actual situation like this, trying to avoid actual combat is going to be your best option. Or going about it in a smart way. Harassment fire, using ambush tactics, things like that. A lot more guerrilla warfare tactics rather than like, all right, we're going to go hit this. We're going to go straight in and hit this objective and like clear these guys out. Yeah, because you just don't have
the manpower.
Yeah, it's important to know that.
Or the resources, like the people, if you're in a situation where you have like, like some big player is in and they actually, they got QRFs, they got all the resources, they got medevacs and things like that. You probably don't have all that. I mean, you may.
Oh, yeah.
If you really have built up your community and...
You're not going to have aviation, or you're not going to have air assets and,
you know... Might.
I mean, I guess. But, yeah, it's important to know that the U.S. Army actually operates off of a 3-to-1 odds. So, or, a 3-to-1 ratio. So, what I mean by that is when you're going to go attack something, you want to outnumber the enemy 3-to-1.
Yep.
And that's for offensive stuff. And if you don't have that, it's generally a good rule of thumb to break contact. Like that was kind of like a thing that's used in like the leadership side of it. Like, hey, if you don't have 3-to-1 odds, if you don't have, if you don't outnumber the enemy 3-to-1, then you break contact and you get out of there.
Yeah, it's very dependent on how close.
Yeah.
The contact is, because like short ambushes.
Yep.
You're taught to push through your objective, but
yep. But I mean, just for perspective, even the United States Army sets up operations based on that 3-to-1 outnumbering ratio. Like you look at the operation that went and got Osama bin Laden, and how many guys were involved with that? Tons of dudes. There's I think there was like 6 people in that compound or something. Super small amount of people in there. And it was like, I want to say like 60 people were involved in that operation.
Yeah.
Like they went into that. And that's, a lot of people don't realize that. I think people see the movies and they're like, yeah, well, you got this 4-man SEAL teams that are out there doing stuff. And you do, but it's very, very passive. It's usually reconnaissance based.
Yeah.
Small reconnaissance teams that are never supposed to be found. I mean, one of the more famous ones is the Lone Survivor. You had the very small unit of guys that were a recce team. It's a recce,
which is kind of just a botched mission.
Yeah, and it
was.
Yeah, they messed up. They got compromised. I mean, it was a terrible situation, and you can't plan for everything. And they did their best, and unfortunately, all those guys but one didn't make it. And there's really good books and stuff on that, and I encourage reading them because it gives a lot of perspective into that stuff, and how that stuff goes down. And these are some of the most well-trained people on the planet. And it's just, your odds aren't good if you're up against, hundreds of insurgents and there's only a handful of you. So, or hundreds of enemy, I should say. But so anyways, that's just a little perspective as far as the offensive side of things. Now, if you got to do what you got to do. I mean, if you got an enemy encroaching on you and you're like, dude, this is bad. Like, they're going to come in here and they're going to, kill all of our family, or whatever. It's like, you got to go stand in the void and do what you got to do. So combat patrol might be what you got to do. But, it's just important to know from the planning perspective. And after you kind of go off that MET-TC, that can kind of influence you on like, what kind of patrol do we actually need? And then that can better advise you on how to kit up, what kind of personnel you need, things like that, depending on what kind of patrol you want to do.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Comms. So you need to plan out your comms. How are you going to use them? Are you going to black out your comms? Are you not going to use them? Are you dealing with somebody that will be able to find you as soon as you transmit? Are you dealing with somebody that isn't going to be able to pick up your communications? You need to know how far your radios push, even on low power, what kind of terrain masking you can do.
I was about to say, depending on the terrain, you're going to have to like we kind of started working around with that, like trying different terrains, how far we could push on low power versus high power and things like that. So, and we noticed pretty quickly, like if you stay within a valley, you're able to push pretty far with your, with low power and whatnot. Where if you like go behind a hill or mountain or something like that, like you're not actually able to push that far. So it's terrain masking is actually huge. Like I would suggest people to play around with it. Like if you got a group of guys, go out there and test different things, and that's where maps come in handy because you can plan your route accordingly based off your communications. As well.
Yeah, and on that, I mean, knowing navigation, and knowing your routes. Actually having routes for your patrol is super important. You need to know point A to point B and contingencies in between. Are you going to have checkpoints along the way, or are you going to check in with like a home base, or are you going to, like I said, go black on comms, or you're not going to talk until you get back? Are you going to go off of like time standards where like, hey, we're going to only check in on the top of the hour every 4 hours or whatever?
Yeah, and if you miss those timestamps, what are your plans? We talked about it, I think, in one of the podcasts. We talked about PACE, your primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency plans, and that you can have those set up within your comm windows, Having certain rally points that you can rally up on if for whatever reason you can't get comms, because at that point you're shutting down and you're moving to those points, So
yeah. I mean, contingencies are important. Having those in place, you can't just have plan A, and just go. You need to have plan B, C, and D. Stuff happens, and you need to have predetermined things in place. Otherwise, you're going to be ate up.
Yep.
You're going to be out there just getting at the influence of the environment and of the situation. That's not good.
And then going off of navigation as well, planning out, your linear danger areas that you're going to cross, LDA crossings. Build SOPs with your group of guys how you want to cross those areas.
Mm-hmm.
If you can limit the amount of times you have to cross LDAs. I mean, they're called a danger area for a reason. Like you want to limit the exposure you have in your movement on those. I mean, sometimes it's just unavoidable because we live in an area that's pretty, I mean, for us in Alaska, it's a little easier to avoid it, but like I imagine down in the States where there's roads everywhere, it's much more difficult.
It's something you just have to do.
So build a good SOP. I mean, that's an easy thing to go out and practice. Just find a road that doesn't get a ton of traffic on, because you're just out there fully kitted up, just crossing, like your neighbors are like, what's going on right now? Like,
and this is a little bit of a tangent, but on that, like, you can go out and work on a lot of this passively, like just in civilian attire and, no rifles and stuff. But I highly encourage you to make time. You can go through the motions, basically, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And it won't look too out of place. But if you can, you got to go out and put this stuff on. I mean,
I'm just imagining people do LDAs without kit on.
They're
funny. Still looking out of place.
Oh, yeah. That's true. What are these guys doing? You're like at a crosswalk.
Yeah.
Waiting for the little white hand.
Yeah.
Don't
get any jaywalking charges.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a ridiculous charge regardless, but whatever.
I mean, and on that, urban LDA crossing is a little different than, than like rural ones.
Yeah.
But still, it's stuff you need to work on. We'll talk about this in part 2. These are more things we're going to go into, like the specifics.
But I'm just saying, like, as far as navigation, like, you got to plan for all this stuff. You got to plan for, different terrains. Like, you're not going to go up a mountain.
Yeah.
You're not going to just walk directly up a mountain. You're going to work around it.
Yeah.
Or you're going to side hill it. you're not going to go directly down into a draw if you don't have to, because depending on where you're at, they could be just heavy vegetated, and you're just going to be miserable.
Yeah.
Unless you want to be miserable, then I guess you can do that.
Yeah.
If you're down in the, lower 48 and you actually have snakes, we don't have those here. The amount of times I about stepped on water moccasins down in North Carolina, down in a draw, is just, I did it too many times. Let's just say that. So keep that in consideration.
Yeah. That goes back to you in METTC, the terrain, into that T in METTC for terrain and weather. These are things you need to know and consider for your planning. And then kind of the final point of planning is briefing. You need to actually get together and brief this stuff. Briefing's overlooked, and briefing is so important. And a lot of times it's viewed as like redundant or annoying. I've like being in, I remember like sometimes having a bad attitude about going to a briefing. It's like, we got to do this stupid patrol brief, and we do it every single time before we go out, and nothing changes. There's a reason for that. You got to cover all the same stuff. Talk about, here's what we're going to do for this. You go over all the stuff we've talked about. You brief the mission. You talk about what you're going to do. And then you go over all of your, SOPs that cover whatever's going to happen while you're out there. Like, it could be like, okay, in the event of in an event where someone, gets injured, here's what we're going to do. Here's the guys that are going to respond to it. And if the guy that's supposed to respond to it is the one that gets injured, here's the guy that responds to him. These are all things that you go through every time before you go out. Yep. And that should be an integral part of your planning, is the briefing side of it. Got to get in the habit of briefing. And it's easy to practice. It's as simple as like, even before you go to the range to shoot, hey man, let's all meet up here and let's like talk about what we're going to do today. And actually like in doing an intentional, like pre-arranged briefing about like, here's the drills we're going to run. This is going to be our topic of focus today. This is, that's a good way to practice that. But when it comes to operational stuff, briefing is extremely important, and it needs to be done.
Yeah. And honestly, like I can't stress enough how important it is to, mix up who gives the briefings within the group, because I think a lot of times you don't realize how much work goes into that, like the preparation and the brief. So if everyone kind of has that understanding and understands a good way to do briefings, I feel like as a listener in a briefing, you can sit there and you pay attention a whole lot more, because you're like, I know how much work goes into this, and I know how important it is to actually have the details memorized for myself, or not memorized, but written down, whatever you need to do.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, it's a great way to learn, from an administrative perspective. Like if you're training this stuff, you're working this stuff into your training regiment, actually doing briefings and forcing like different people in your group to like, hey, you're going to give the briefing this time. It promotes learning. They have to go and prepare, and you can give feedback to each other and be constructive. The other thing too is like if people have specialties, like if you've got a comms guy, or if you've got like a guy that's like handles like vehicle operations, that's basically what we did. We had specific people that were like in charge of whatever position or in charge of whatever specific topic, and then they would go up and brief the unit or their team or platoon or whatever on it. So like one of the things that I had to do overseas was vehicle recovery. That was like one of the big ones that I was responsible for when we were doing mounted stuff. And I'd go up and be like, in the event of somebody getting stuck, or in the event of someone's hitting an ID or whatever it was, and I'd have this whole thing I went through. Like, here's what we're going to do. This is how I want the trucks to set up. And that was like my responsibility, was to brief that. The other thing was CASEVAC. My vehicle was also CASEVAC and recovery vehicle. So me and then my medic would brief CASEVAC how we're going to do it. He would brief the more medical side of it, and I would brief the more operational vehicle side of it. So you can have guys in your like group that specialize in certain areas that need to brief on those specific specializations.
Yeah. And I would say, try to pay attention, like it's easy to just zone out like in a training situation and be like, it's not life or death. You don't feel it's life or death at that situation, but definitely try to pay attention, because not only does it help you learn, but also you can give, corrective criticism to the person doing the briefing. You can help them. Hey, you didn't cover this. Maybe you want to cover this next time.
Yeah.
Because when you actually are doing it for real, it's pretty easy to listen to. Like, I remember, like, our briefings on something that was very, like, small and stuff. Like, when I was in the military, I mean, I was a young guy in the military. I was just a kid. So,
yeah.
I would just kind of zone out and be, like, doing my own thing, But anytime, like, airborne missions and stuff like that, I always listen to those briefings really well.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I do not want to be the guy that's lost out there.
Yeah.
Like, I want to find my people. But,
yeah,
like, where you actually have a little skin on the line, then it's like, it's pretty easy to pay attention. But I would just say, definitely pay attention, because it's beneficial for the whole team in that situation, for sure.
Yeah. Just be intentional about it. Like, try to treat, a common thing you hear is train like you fight, and do that in all aspects. Wear the gear that you're supposed to wear, have your gun set up the way that you would actually have it set up, and then brief the way you would actually brief if you were going out to potentially face an enemy,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically the breakdown of planning. Just to give you some, like, good information there. The next thing, and sticking with the 5 basics of patrolling, is reconnaissance. So yeah, start breaking down reconnaissance.
Just say tune into our podcast.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Well, and that's a very specific, that was based specifically on, like, a reconnaissance mission, going out and setting up a more intentional reconnaissance position, like a serve site, which is a surveillance site. But this is a little more, like, specific to patrolling. It could be a reconnaissance patrol, but I guess the whole point of patrolling is that you're always getting some kind of level of reconnaissance out of the patrol.
Yeah. No, yeah, because, I mean, most of the time, even if it's an area you've been in before, there's things that change,
Yeah.
So you're, like I said earlier, keeping your head on a swivel, constantly looking around, stopping, doing seals, doing, all this stuff that, was so ingrained in us from an infantry, from an infantryman's perspective. Like, that was all just stuff that we were, like, just constantly drilled into our brains, like, this is what you got to do. This is what you got to do.
Yeah.
Trying to be quiet, trying to move, where you're not just breaking every branch that's underneath your foot, and then just being a Yeti out in the woods, just smashing around.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're, like, you're trying to get information. Like, if you're doing a screening patrol, it's most likely an area that you've already gotten control of, and you're trying to make sure you maintain control of it. Well, anything you find out there that seems out of place, or even just small things like vehicle tracks, or like, hey, what is that in the distance? We haven't noticed that before. Taking good notes of things, so things like that stick out.
Yeah.
Having logs of what happened. So if something happens later on, you can look back, like, hey, well, what's our log? What did our log say from yesterday's patrol? Was anything out of place that could give us a little more information on this?
Yeah, and just because you've taken control of an area, and, like, if we're using the screening patrolling as an example, that doesn't mean that you can just go out there and stick out like a sore thumb either.
Oh yeah,
you need to take in consideration for camouflage. You need to, you need to try to blend in, because otherwise, it doesn't take much just to swipe you down, like to have someone just have a gun team up and take out your entire squad that's moving. So,
yeah. Yep. You're also going to focus on reconnaissance for, like, obstacles too. Like if there's things that are blocking roads, or if you want to block off roads with like physical obstacles, that's stuff too that you can take into consideration.
Yeah.
But yeah, there needs to always be, in every patrol, there should be a level of active reconnaissance going on. You should be trying to figure out good information on different things like that. All right, so anything else to add on reconnaissance?
No, I mean, there's probably a ton more, but we could sit here all day and talk about all the different things we could talk about. But hopping into the next one, I guess security, right?
Yep.
So we kind of covered this a little bit with camo considerations. I mean, obviously that's a form of security, blending into the woods, you know?
Yep.
Not being seen, but also a form of security is spacing, and in a manner that you can't see the whole team. Like, not one area is going to be able to see everyone. At least it shouldn't.
Yeah.
You know, so formations, positioning, and
being able to maneuver.
Yeah, being able to maneuver within and without of that. So, that's something you kind of talked about. It. That's almost a podcast within itself. But having good SOPs built within your group of guys, knowing how to move through the woods where you have a good distance, and then you're moving in a way that is still, you know, you can condense down into tighter air, like with tighter brush or whatever it may be, and then you can spread back out when you're able to, basically. And then if you were to get attacked, or if you're going to attack from there, you're able to still maneuver within those formations effectively, and without getting people killed or killing yourselves. You know, friendly fire is unfortunately, it's a thing that we lost a lot of soldiers to overseas, and I think we always have. You know, World War II, it probably happened all the time. All our wars.
Yeah.
You know, so
it's just part of it. Like it happens.
It's why you have to train, because you need to have contingencies as far as like, I mean, yeah, I don't know. We'll probably do a podcast on battle drills eventually, but like there needs to be like methods and procedures within your squad and team for hitting objectives and things like that, where you're not shooting your people.
Yeah.
Because you do need to have some sort of support by fire, I feel like it gives you an incredible edge over your enemy.
Yep.
But it also can lead to friendly fire pretty quickly. So if you don't know what you're doing, or if you haven't trained for it.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. No, and this is a really deep part of it. I mean, security is a critical part of any, not just patrolling, but any kind of operation. You need to maintain security, because that's what keeps you from getting killed. You know, having good security, whether it's through visual, like Steven was saying, being properly positioned in formations, not to be seen, or not for all of you to be seen. Also, not to get swept by a gun position or taken out by indirect, you know, all at once.
Yeah.
All things that have happened. These are lessons learned from many conflicts.
That's another thing within maneuvering is, in the case that does happen, you do lose some guys to indirect fire or whatever. Being able to maneuver in a way that you can bound out, but still get your guys out that potentially are down.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
so briefly, I just want to go over like some formations. These aren't going to be all of them. I just want to go over some key ones that are worth knowing. And again, we're probably going to do a podcast on formations, because I think it's like really important to know, and there's a lot you can go into on this.
And it's honestly, I think it's important in a podcast form, but we'd like to do content on it as well, whether that's photos, videos, things like that.
It's going to be a mixture of all. Yeah.
Like I said before, I'm a dum-dum and I'm a visual learner. So
yeah,
I got to either physically go out and do it, or I got to actually see it being done or something. I can listen and figure it out as well, but I feel like I get a better grasp when I have actually all three, you know?
Yeah.
Which makes sense. I mean, if you can get taught all three ways, and it really
that's the best.
Breaks it down for you.
And that's kind of what we'd like to do. We'd like to, you know, we're going to make posts on patrolling. I'm probably going to try to do a patrolling post this week, like in conjunction with this podcast. So on our Instagram, we'll do that. But then we at some point whenever we have the time, we're going to go out and make some good high quality videos of this stuff too, actually putting it to work and talking about it and the different concepts and stuff like that. But anyways, yeah. But specifically on formations, the biggest one you're going to really know or see and probably use the most of is referred to as the wedge. And I know this is kind of hard to explain over podcasts, but basically if you got 4 guys in a team, which is a pretty standard size fire teams, 4 people, you're kind of moving, you're spread out, 10 to 15 meters. And again, this is terrain dependent. If you're in a city or if you're in like really thick vegetation, then it might be at 5 meters. You might be a little closer.
Yeah, which I never liked the wedge in urban.
Yeah.
I was kind of a diamond guy.
Yeah.
In urban areas, I don't know why.
Dude, the old staggered column too was really nice.
Yeah. If you're running roads, staggered column's pretty sweet, but
which I'll break down in a second. So the wedge, I'm going to base this all on 4 people. And it expands out of that. And like I said, we'll try to have some good content on this. There's some good, if you just look up like wedge formation military or wedge formation tactical or something like that, you'll find a lot of good info on it. But basically you have your point man who's at basically the top of the arrow, because it's kind of shaped like a forward facing arrow. And then to that person's right side, you'll have someone roughly 10 meters away. That's like to the right side of them,
behind,
like moving backwards. Yep.
Almost at like a 4 o'clock position.
Yep. And then basically immediately to the left side, you're going to have someone in the exact same position. So mirroring the guy that's on the right side, if that makes sense. And then
I was like trying to listen and see how much this actually makes sense in my ears.
Does it make sense in your ears?
I mean, it makes sense because I know what it is.
Okay, yeah. So basically, you've got your point man, you've got a guy to the left and a guy to the right. They're both back, about 10 meters, depending on terrain, at about 4 o'clock position and a 7 o'clock position from the point man. And then on either side, you have your 4th guy who's at either the left guy or right guy's 4 or 7 o'clock.
4 or 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Which side they're on.
So it's heavy to one side. And you want to get really specific. The side that's got one guy on it would be your automatic rifleman. So if you're some super high speed team that has fully auto belt fed stuff, then the side with only one guy on it is the heavy hitter.
Yeah.
So, but that's generally how that works. You can also do like you can do a 3-man wedge where you've got, a point man and one guy to the 4, one guy to the 7. But yeah, that's something you can use to move through like rural areas very effectively. It's easy to spread out more too. Like if you move into like a bigger area, you can spread your wedge out and make your spacing in between individual people a lot more. So that way you're, covering a lot more area, and you're also, not as easily seen. You're not clustered together for a nice little indirect fire to come in and smack you.
Yeah, and if you do get, attacked in that position, you have your firepower so spread out that it's kind of difficult. Like you can actually maneuver in and out of that because you're, if you got one guy that's popping off shots that's 30 meters away from me, they're going to be focused on that person where I can bound back or bound forward depending on what I want to do. And they're going to have to switch positions to change shooting toward me if I'm moving. So it's like, it's giving you a little bit more time, I guess.
Yep.
By it being more spread out.
Yeah. And also on that, your sectors of fire should be a lot more free in the wedge. That's the other benefit, is that you can basically turn any direction and have almost all your guys able to engage the target because of how you're spaced out and the kind of just the shape that you're in. They should be able to point at whichever direction you're taking fire from and shoot there, and without shooting directly at their teammate.
Yep.
So that also helps mitigate, friendly fire possibilities. Now you need to use common sense and understand your sectors of fire. Know your role, know where you're at, and also you don't want to let down security. Just because you're getting attacked from one side doesn't mean you're not going to get attacked from the other. So you need to make sure you're maintaining security to the opposite side or to the other parts of your element.
Yeah.
Another really common one that you'll use is called the file. And this one's going to be really easy to explain. You remember when you get in a line back when you were in school and you lined up at your door to get, and your teacher led you out of the class? That's pretty much exactly what the file is. So single file line. That's what the file is.
Yep. And you can have decent spacing there too,
yep.
But same thing, if you take contact from a 12 o'clock position or a 6 o'clock position, a little bit harder to engage the targets because you are in a line. And it's also easier just for them to just wipe everyone out because you're in a line.
Yep.
So,
but it works really good in like thick vegetation. Also through cities where you're like if you're going down an alley or something like that, the file's gonna be beneficial to you.
Yeah. If you're going through thick vegetation, don't even try to. I mean, you can try it, but just to learn from it. But you're just gonna lose people doing the wedge through thick vegetation.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to look back and you're going to be like, where's Jimmy? I don't know where he's at. He's gone. The alligators got him.
Yeah. I mean, but like Steven said, you need to maintain good spacing. You should be able to see the guy to your front, and you should be able to turn around and see the guy to your rear. If you're in the very front of the formation, then 12 o'clock security is your importance. If you're to the very rear of the formation, then 6 o'clock security is what you're paying attention to.
Yeah.
You're watching your back.
Also, from a point man perspective, don't just leave your guys in the dust. Like, constantly be checking to make sure you still got people behind you. Because if you're separated from them, then you're not doing much good as a point man because you're not really leading anymore. You're just on your own.
Yep. The kind of a variant of the file is referred to as the staggered column. Some people call it staggered file, but basically it's the same thing, but it's really good on roads and stuff like that. You're in a line, like one after the other, but you alternate as you go back. So your point man will be either if you're going down the road, your point man would be either left side or right side of the road, and then the guy immediately behind him would be on the alternate side.
Yeah.
So you'd maintain good spacing, and then you just alternate all the way back to your final guy in the element.
Yep.
So left, right, left, right, left, right, all the way down. It's nice because you can really take over an entire like linear area like that. If you're moving down a trail, if you're moving down a road, if you're moving through like an alleyway, or you're moving through like a valley or something like that, that's a little more linear. Staggered column is really good. You get better spacing. You can also engage forward and backward a little better. You can get more barrels forward and backward because you're staggered.
Yeah.
And then the final one, I'll say there's other ones, but like I said, these are the ones that I think are the main ones you'll use. It's called a line. And what a line is basically a file, but instead of running vertically, it's running horizontally. And it's actually what you would go into if you took contact in a 12 o'clock from like the front and you were in a file. You hear like people say, get on line or get in line. And that's literally guys are going to run up, and they'll alternate left to right and form a line off of that point man from left to right.
Yep.
So just like a file, but instead of running vertically, it's running horizontally. So you can do that out of a staggered column as well.
Yep, and make sure to find cover. Don't just get online because you're online. Make sure that you're actually behind something that can stop bullets. Otherwise,
you're
just going to die.
Yep. And then the positioning, in and out of that stuff is important, like maintaining good spacing. And that'll become the more you do this stuff, that's why you got to go out and do it. Like, you can hear about it all day long, or you can read about it or watch videos on it, till you go out and you actually start walking around and you realize like, you'll go through those moments where you're like, I'm honestly kind of like confused. I'm kind of lost in the sauce right now. Like, do I kneel here? Do I, those are things you won't experience until you're physically out there doing it.
Yep.
So go out and do it. and practice these formations, mess around with them. You can type in and look these up easily, all of them. Just do like I said, tactical formation line, tactical formation wedge, tactical formation file, stagger column.
Yeah, and have hand and arm signals for all that stuff because you got to have it. Otherwise, I don't know what your plan is. I don't know how you're going to move in and out of things.
Yeah.
Communicate because, we kind of talked about it on the radio podcast, but the less radio traffic you do, the less of a footprint you're going to make for yourself to be compromised and found. So in all reality, like if you could do your entire mission without using the radio, that's going to be better. Like you have them in case you need them, but don't use them unless you need to.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's like, I feel like that's the most simple way to break that down.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if you're just lollygagging on the radio, you're just going to get a mortar dropped on your head. And
then good night. So, yeah. And then, like if you're being smart with these formations, and like Steven said, there are specific hand and arm signals for these that you can look up and use. You can make up your own too. It doesn't really matter as long as everybody in your team knows what they mean.
Yeah.
That's the most important part. That goes back into coordination and planning. It can be part of your briefing. Like, hey, this is what we're using for this. Remember, like just a reminder, here's, you can even talk about like, hey, if you have like maps, you can be like, hey, we're probably going to wedge through most of this, but in case we need to dip into a file that's going to be decided by the point man in the moment, so things like that. Your movement is generally decided by your point man. So your point man, more often than not, should be someone that's got good navigating skills and potentially a more of a leadership position as well.
Yeah.
So, but again, small unit tactics, everyone should be capable of being the point man.
I was about to say, yeah. I would definitely, just like when we were talking about the briefings, you need to put people in different positions. You need to have them figure it out because understanding another person's job makes it easier to work as a team.
Yeah.
Like if all you know is your job, if one day you have to step up and do some other guy's job, you're just going to be clueless.
Yep.
And then also you can do things in your job to benefit the other person's job once you understand like, oh, well, this guy's got to deal with this. So
very true.
Just makes it more a well-oiled machine.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, yep. Good security. You're going to have a lot of that through your formations. Obviously, you need to have good spacing and stuff like that, like we talked about for like engaging stuff or firing on enemies and stuff like that.
Yep.
So yeah, maintaining good security. The next section is control. And this is a big one through like proper, a big part of this is proper management. So this kind of goes back into, it could be formations. It could be how your team is set up, having a good management structure in place, whether that's like more often than not, realistically, that's just going to be coordination, like having good coordination for your guys. Everyone, like you said, everyone knows their job, but then they also know everyone else's jobs. I mean, you got to wear a lot of hats from a small unit perspective.
Yep.
You really do. Guys get hurt. Guys die. Like, got to be able to step in. I mean, it's morbid, but it's the reality. If guys go down, that guy's not available anymore. So somebody else has to pick up the mantle there or whatever that guy's position was or job or whatever.
Yep.
Kind of going more into like the patrol side of the control is, area denial, controlling like specific parts of your environment and actually physically controlling them. Like you're not letting anyone in, you're not letting anyone out, depending on kind of what you're trying to do. Maintaining perimeters, always having like constant control over the area that you're in, whether that's through fire superiority or presence or like physically pushing people out, whether it's like might be more neutral, but you're like, nope, you can't come in here. the situation and the environment dictates so much, and we can sit here and what if it all day, but just having good area control, like physically over the environment, the AO, the area of operation that you're in. Making sure you have good efficient movement. This is going back to those formations we were talking about. This is a huge part of that. Formations isn't just about security. It's about like being effective in controlling the environment. Like the way you're positioned, the way you're spread out, the amount of people you have will, can make a presence that is a lot harder to move against.
Yeah, definitely.
Were you about to say something?
Well, I was going to say also, like, just, efficient movement, and the fact that, this goes back to what I was talking about with the land navigation as well, in a way, having a good route plan. So that way, it's hard to look like you're in control when you have a bunch of guys who are just beat down and defeated.
Yeah.
So, keep your guys motivated, keep your guys hydrated, keep your guys fed. Like, sometimes that's not an option, but if it is an option, then plan for it. This goes back to the briefing, kind of. A lot of this stuff goes back to the briefing in a way, but
yeah,
have a good plan. So
yeah, good comm discipline is part of control. Maintaining, like Steven was saying, you don't want to just be having big, long, drawn out conversations on the radio. And honestly, from this perspective, you don't really want to use the radio as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're as small as if you're max number 6 people,
yeah,
you're just not very big.
No,
you're tiny.
Yep.
You're
an ant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just one ant too.
Yeah.
Not like multiple ants.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, I just would say know your radio, know how to use it, have SOPs within the radio, make sure everyone that's on your team that's carrying radios knows how to use it as well, but also have discipline on the radio.
Yep.
Because as soon as you start getting radio waves involved, whether that's drones, radios, everything else that runs on radios, you're pretty easy to be picked up.
Oh yeah, especially by a big player.
And even not by a big player.
True.
But like if some Joe Schmo ham radio guy can come track you down, what do you think the U.S. government can do? Or what do you think Russia can do? Or what do you think China can do?
Yeah,
anyone's going to be able to track you.
For sure.
So, I mean, it's going to be tough regardless because there's satellite imagery and things like that. So if they want you, they'll probably be able to find you, but that is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's and that the more our technology increases, the harder this stuff becomes. But, yeah, so just having good control measures in place is really important. And then getting into the final of the final of the 5 basics of patrolling is common sense. Common, not so common. Yeah, and a big part of that is like all these basics, all these things we're talking about, they should be second nature. Like, this isn't something you should have to think about. Like, you should be able to, as you're walking, you should be able to see a hand signal and immediately start maneuvering to get into the position you're supposed to be in. It shouldn't be like you have to look around. I remember being in and like doing this stuff in basic training and stuff like that for the first time, and it was easy to get confused. Like, you kind of look around like, what was that one again? Or like,
plus there's a fear of messing up and basic.
Yeah,
like that's like, dude, I'm gonna get just destroyed right now.
Or complacency. You're not paying it. You're just kind of like aimlessly looking around, and you're not looking at the guys that are a part of your unit as much as you should, and you might miss out on certain things. Yeah, like this stuff you should be able to just effortlessly push into a lot of this stuff. It's second nature. It needs to just be something that you've done it enough to where you don't really have to think about doing much of it,
Yeah.
You're able to push up into a position that's got good cover and concealment. These are all things that should, again, just be kind of a second nature thing that you do. Another good part of like common sense is like just knowing your job. You know, like if you've got a specific job, a specific thing you do, like let's say you're the medical guy. You're the quote unquote medic for your team. Like you need to be the best at that. Like everyone should know that stuff. Kind of like what Steven, like what you were saying earlier, you know, you should be able to wear a lot of hats. You should be good at all this stuff. But you're going to have people that have strengths in certain areas and interests in certain areas. And if you do have a strength in a certain area, like you should be the subject matter expert in that area. Like,
yeah,
you should crush that. Like,
build off that strength, because ultimately, if you have the passion there, then you're going to be the best person for the job. You know, unless there's multiple people that have that passion, then it's like, well,
yeah, but
we can all kind of do it. But
yeah, know your job and know, you know, and that goes more into like, if you're the point man in a team, like take it seriously. Like you're responsible for the movement. You're responsible for the direction more often than not. Like, yeah, you can have other people checking it as well, checking you and make sure you're heading the right way. But yeah, you need to know what's going on. There shouldn't be any like questioning. You need to be able to make decisions and kind of go for it. You know, that should just be like a again, second nature part. Like, you know what you're doing, be confident in what you're doing, you know, don't get caught in analysis paralysis, get in there, make a decision and go with it.
Yeah.
Another good thing you can use, like kind of under common sense, is, and Steven actually mentioned it earlier, but it's SILS, and it's actually another acronym. The military loves its acronyms, and it's SLLS. And it's stop, look, listen, and smell. And this one is like, this is something you should be doing all the time. And it's an acronym that...
Turn into a hound dog.
Yeah. But it's exactly what it sounds like. You stop the patrol. And it, like, I've noticed it too, because when we're out training, anytime Steven's at point, he'll stop the unit a lot. And just kind of like, I can tell he's doing SILs, but some of our guys are like, you know, somewhat new to some of this stuff. And so they'll be like, they're just kind of looking around like, what's going on? Steven's up there just out of habit doing SILs. But it cracks me up.
Yeah, I wish I could see some of the... Sometimes I can't see what else is going on. Cause
yeah.
A lot of times on the point, so...
Yeah.
Which we do. I want to start mixing that up, but just for now, like while we're getting everyone on... You know, you got to know your job before you start knowing other people's jobs.
For sure.
And being point man is not necessarily my job, but for right now, I got some experience, so I'm gonna run with it.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I would like to pass that over eventually and let someone else do it, because
yeah,
I don't know.
No, it's good. I mean,
it's honestly a lot of responsibility to be the point man. So
yeah,
which I have no problem with, but I'm just saying, like, share the love a little bit, I guess.
Oh yeah. But yeah, it's exactly what it sounds like. You stop formation, look around. Is anything out of place? Looking for movement. Movement sticks out like a sore thumb. What is that movement? Did they see you? Listen. Use your ears. A lot of guys are getting high speed with like Peltors and you know, over ear electronic ear pro and stuff like that. That's sick. They work really good for comms, and a lot of them have active listening. But from my experience with those, and I've ran a lot of different ones now. I've had, over the last few years, Steven and I have been fortunate enough to get to try a lot of that stuff. They're fantastic. They're really good ear pro. They're really good at managing comms and stuff and keeping it all consolidated. And you can hear pretty good with them, but it's not as good as your ear. It's just not.
No, and it seems like it picks up things that are a lot closer to you, like leaves crackling or whatever. That's just like super, just like amped up in your ears with those things, where it's not really actually like that in real life, but you can't hear anything far away from you.
Yeah.
And that's actually what you're trying to listen for. I mean, obviously you want to listen to close to you, but if they're that close to you, then you screwed up. You should have done SEALs earlier.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know. I have a hard time with it. like honestly, I'm not running ears if I'm out doing patrolling. I'm just not doing it. I would run. You know, they got those headsets that have the open ears, which that's a good option because then you still have your boom mic and all that stuff.
Yep. And you can still run them. You can just.
I've never got to run one of those. I would like to try that. I think that would work really good.
Yeah. They work awesome. Like, I mean, it's nice to have like a set of pelt. I mean, we all have Peltors, but they're awesome. I love them, but they're also, you need to just know the limitations. Like, might have to pop them off, and if you get into a fight, throw them on real quick, or if you're doing something direct action or you're doing like a combat patrol, maybe you helmet up with your Peltors on or whatever. So there's situations for it. I'm not saying don't use them, but
yeah, and you can run ears up on most of the like lid setups. Like you can just, I don't know.
Yeah,
dude, I just go into full like. I don't know. Like I go into full like recce mode, dude. I don't want to have like I want to be as light as possible. Like I'm boonie cap. I'm not wearing anything on my ears.
Yeah.
I'm running a chest rig. I'm not running plates.
Yep.
Like you find me, I'm running a small group anyways, you're gonna kill me anyway, so more than likely.
But you're not gonna find me.
Because I'm not gonna be heavy stomping around, dude.
Yeah. And then the last one on there is smell, and that might sound really weird to some people, but you can learn a lot by just using your old schnoz, the old nose. Campfires, smelling like if something died, smelling that smell of like rotting flesh.
Yeah,
that can tell you a lot.
Dead animals,
Yep.
If you're coming up on a dead animal, I mean. It can be a lot of signs. It could be just another animal killed it, or it could be, we got come up on an animal where the guts are there and the carcass is there, but there's no meat on it. It's like, that looks like a human. That's definitely human work. That's not I mean, it could be a really, really skilled
picky bear
coyote. No, I'm just playing. But like, yeah, I mean, you're going to be able to tell a lot. So constantly be smelling. I mean, when you've been out in the woods for a long time, I can attest to this. Like, I remember I'd go out on missions and stuff like that for multiple weeks and be out in the woods and not take showers and not do any. The only cleaning that we got was a little bit of baby wipe action every once in a while, which was still pretty rare. And you get back to, I don't know, civilization, we'll say. And you can smell, you can smell body wash. You can smell, like, I remember one time, like girls' perfume is like the strongest smell in the world when you get out of the field.
Yeah.
Because you're like, not only does it smell good, but you're like, your nose is super amped up.
Yeah.
Like the old sniffer is on high alert.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe I was just young and
just hormones just leading the way.
Dude, maybe.
No, it's true. Like when I got back from Afghanistan, it was the same thing. I was in that third world country smelling.
Hormones lead the way. My hormones took the point.
Stop, listen, and smell. No, but when I got back from Afghanistan, I was smelling a third world country for a year, and dude, everything smelled so good. Like when I got back, and I could smell like individual things.
Yeah,
But then I would also smell things that like recognized me that reminded me of Afghanistan. Like I would go by the dump or something, smelling like, what the heck? So yeah,
isn't that weird?
Yeah, it's super weird,
dude. Weirdly, like menthol cigarettes, dude. They bring me back to the military so hard. Dude. Like I smell them. I'm like one of those weird guys that like smells good because it's like a good memory.
Yep, I'm the same way.
Which I don't smoke, so.
Yeah,
that's super weird for a non-smoker to like the smell of smoke, but
yeah, especially menthol cigarettes because they're like a lot of people think they smell disgusting, but I actually really like the smell of them. I'm the same way. So yeah, trust your senses, like, and give yourself time to do it. This is something that should be integrated into not just patrolling, multiple things. Like I think we brought up sills in the reconnaissance podcast too.
Yeah.
It is a constant thing. Like if you're doing any kind of operational stuff, like out in the field or really like any military style kind of thing like that, you're going to use it. If you're like a cop and you're doing stuff, utilize this. You do it probably without even thinking about it, smelling drugs or alcohol,
I think it's
or whatever.
Some of it's a natural instinct for humans.
Yep.
To do. It's a little bit, I would say it's a little bit like just natural. But to actually be the point man and make the choice to, all right, well, I'm going to stop the whole element. Like, don't feel like you're inconveniencing people by doing that. Like, if you feel you need to do it, then do it. Like, I don't even give a crap about anyone. I mean, I give a crap about them, but I'm like, I don't care what they think. Like, why are we stopping so much? It's like, for one, it's good practice for everyone to like, okay, we're going to take a knee, we're going to get behind some sort of cover.
Yep.
We're going to face out in the, the direction that our area is,
yep.
This is
my area to secure.
Yep.
Yep.
And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to actively do it myself, so.
Yeah.
And by it, I mean SEALs.
Yeah. So yeah, make it habitual, do it. And use it often. This is another one of those things you can use in all aspects of your life. Kind of like MedTC.
Yeah.
You can definitely use SEALs in your marriage.
Dude, I do it when I come home. I come home from for dinner.
Yeah.
Walk in the house. I stop, look, listen, and I smell. And you could tell a lot. You're like, kids are in a good mood, or if they're crying.
Yep.
If the house is a mess, then it's probably was a rough day on the wife.
Yep.
Like, she just got ran down. If there's no food being cooked, it's like, yep, it was a rough day.
Yep.
But if it's nice and house is clean and there's no crying babies and there's food that you smell, it's like, man, success today.
Yeah.
Success today. It's a good day. Like,
Yeah.
you're walking into a happy situation more than likely.
Yeah.
You're not like, oh boy, well, let's prepare mentally for this.
Another part of common sense that I think is often overlooked is cover and concealment. I think it's important to know the difference between the two, and it's super simple. People nerd out on this super hard, but I'm just gonna break it down really.
People nerd out on pretty much everything we've talked about.
Yeah. So cover is something you can hide behind or be behind that's gonna give a physical barrier between you and projectiles.
Munitions.
So yeah, rounds, actually being able to take cover behind something and not get shot.
Barriers.
Yeah, HESCO barriers is cover. A giant tree could probably be cover. Concrete, vehicles. Well, vehicles is kind of depends.
Knowing where to get behind a vehicle.
Yep, for sure. But yeah, hard structures, hard impenetrable structures is cover. Concealment is something that just hides you. Might be some thick vegetation, could be like a bush,
Could be a car door.
Like a wall, like sheetrock.
Yep.
Those are
But
concealment.
car doors.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yep.
It's going to conceal you, but more than likely, you're going to be able to send bullets through it all day long, unless you got some crazy doors.
Yep. So every time you stop, like, it's something that you should always do while you're walking. You should always be looking for cover. Like, that's something they always, that was harped on in the military. Like, while you're walking, you need to look for your next cover. Like, if you were to have to run to something,
Yeah, and if you just like dial in on that, I mean, I can say, at least from my experience, if you do, because I was taught the same thing, I think everyone was taught that. But if you do that for a long enough time, it's almost like a subconscious thing that you're doing constantly.
Yep.
Like, okay,
you're not
this is a good
actively
spot.
focusing on it.
No, it's not like, oh, this is taking up all my attention right now by trying to find the biggest tree in the woods,
Yeah.
Which isn't what you're actually doing, but I'm just saying, like, seeing, okay, I'm the point man, so I'm going to be heading in this direction, or I'm not the point man, I'm in the back. Well, I'm going to either be in a wedge, so I'm kind of pushed out to the right or the left, depending. And I'm going to be kind of moving in this area, so I guess constantly be looking in front of me, like finding different spots.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Yeah, and in a perfect world, you want to have cover and concealment. So you want to find areas that offer you, firstly, cover. You should be able to take cover behind something. Cover is always superior to concealment. When, in a situation where you need to exchange gunfire, you want cover. If you can have both, though, cover and concealment, then that's fantastic. So good cover, you're not able to get shot, and then obviously not being able to be seen. So it's even harder to.
Yeah, you can move. You can maneuver with concealment. That's what's nice by concealment. You can maneuver with cover as well, but if you have like cover behind some thick vegetation, you're able to kind of conceal your movement a little better.
Yep.
It gives you more, I guess, more avenues.
Yeah. And then kind of the last thing I want to point out for common sense is complacency. There's a phrase that is often used, and it's actually, I really like this phrase. It's complacency kills. And I like it because it's very true. And I've been guilty of complacency before. And it's hard. It's an active effort to keep yourself from becoming complacent. It's hard when you're tired. You've been out there for days at a time. You're wet, cold, miserable. You kind of start to like dip into this weird mental game of like, at this point, I don't care if I get shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You almost go like basically suicidal.
Yeah. It sounds weird, but it's like anything would be better than this is kind of what you get into.
Yep.
You need to avoid that. You got to keep yourself focused, keep yourself sharp, eat a candy bar, something like that. Keep yourself in it.
Yeah, man. Have those lickies and chewies, man. That's like the
morale
pick
boosters.
Me up right there.
Yeah.
I can't. I mean, I think everyone's done it. I think everyone's gone into like complacency, especially on patrols, and you just get to the point where you're just worn down. You like I said, you haven't eaten, you haven't drinking enough water, and you're dehydrated, and you're tired, and you're hungry, and you've been out there for too long, and you're out in the heat, or you're out in the cold, which can be worse.
Yeah.
And you're just like, you know what? I don't give a crap right now.
Yeah. And you'll know when you start to dip into complacency when you're just looking around and you're not seeing anything. Like that's like the first sign. You're just like moving your head around,
going through the motions,
and then like you think for a second, like, what did I actually look at? Like I have no idea what I looked at. Like
I do that driving sometimes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so. Sometimes I get into like a complacent driving.
The old oblivious driver.
I'm not that oblivious. No, I pretty much see everyone I know on the road. Like I always catch people like, and I try to wave at them, and they just never wave at me. And I don't know if it's because they just don't recognize my truck, but I feel like my truck's pretty recognizable.
It's because they're oblivious driving, dude. Most people obliviously drive.
Yeah.
It destroys me because I'm like a very active driver. Like it's rare for me to be complacent while driving.
I think it's only when I'm like
just worn down.
Well, like when the roads are just super empty. Like when I'm going on my way into work, my other job, not this job, but this job I'm usually, it's a little bit, not later in the day, but it's not as early as I go into my other job. But
yeah, because you go into your other job at like 4:45 in the morning or something crazy like that.
Yeah. So there's not very many people on the road.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it's just kind of like, you're kind of just like, I usually turn on a podcast or whatever, or music, and I just kind of sit there and listen and just stay in between the lines.
Yeah.
Going through the motions.
Yep. But yeah, that state of mind kills. Like that's often where you get caught off guard. That's where you get just randomly shot by somebody, some movement you could have spotted.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And you can work on that like just through everyday life,
Oh yeah.
If you're out in the woods, just try to like look around, you can do seals too. Like if you're just out there doing stuff, you should be. Why not?
Yeah.
Like I do it when I go on hikes and stuff. Like I go on a lot of hikes with my family. My wife likes hiking, so I like it too. But I'm just saying, like, we go out, do hikes, and I'm constantly, we got bear up here in Alaska, so you got to be a little bit ready at all times. But especially right now, they're hungry right now. during this time of the year. They just woke up.
Yeah.
And they're ready to eat
anything
and everything.
Including you if you're not careful. So.
Yeah, so but yeah, I mean, you can do that. And like I said earlier, if you're a hunter, a lot of this stuff you can put to practice just out hunting.
Yeah.
You know?
You're basically doing standing patrols when you're hunting.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. You're just looking for animals and you're not too worried about someone shooting you unless you just got some crazy hunters out there.
Yeah, you're sitting there glassing a valley or like a hillside or something, or like a water, you know, like a area of water, or you're in a tree stand, you know, whatever you're doing.
Yep.
Bait station, depending on what kind of hunting you're doing.
Yep.
So
it can all be done. It's just got to be actively worked on. You got to make the decision to work on it, you know, and you can do it on walks, you know, whatever you like to do. I mean, you can pretty much apply to anything. So,
yeah.
But I think that ultimately the best training is to actually go out and do patrolling.
Yep, because like we said earlier, you know, train how you fight. You need to train the way that you're planning on fighting. If you ever find yourself in that environment where you have to fight, then you don't want the first time you've been out there with all your gear on, you're actually trying to do this stuff to be in that moment. You should have done it.
Yeah.
Multiple times before.
It's the same thing with medical stuff, like what we always talk about in our trauma medical training. It's like better to make the mistakes and make the learning here. This is where you need to make it happen.
Yeah.
Not when you're doing it for real. So, and sometimes that's the best way to learn because it sticks with you longer. Just like what you were talking about, basic training, when you get, you know, bopped over the head for doing something stupid, it's like, yeah, I'm going to remember that now.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, I don't want to have that happen again, so the mistake doesn't get made again.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I guess kind of as we wrap up here, I mean, I just want to reiterate, like, these are not the things that are necessarily, well, I don't know. See, I have fun doing this kind of stuff, but I feel like a lot of people, you know, when it comes down to like actually doing this stuff, it's like, okay, well, this is going to take a lot of planning. It's going to take a lot of my time. You know, I might not even get to shoot very much or do anything super fun, but you got to go out and do it. I really stand by that, especially if you've got a group of guys that you're working with. You got to go out with them and you got to develop, you know, like Steven was saying earlier, you get in the suck and you'll develop stronger bonds because of it.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, I've noticed it within our group for sure. You know, like everyone's getting, you know, everyone just gets way closer from going out and doing it this way. Like, go out in the woods, you know, you're separated from life kind of. You get to kind of like not worry about that for a little while, like all the, you know, bills and all the lame stuff. And you get to just go out and just have some time out in the woods with your buddies.
Yep.
And just enjoy them and enjoy stuff that you're working on and learn from each other and learn from different experiences. So it's fun, man. I think I think everyone should be out doing it. I think it's just so worth just going out and doing and just trying at least once because you'll get hooked.
Yeah, you will. You absolutely will. And it's also, you know, it's a great way to passively test everything. Like we kind of talked about testing gear, but you can, like I said, it's easy to buy gear. It's so easy. You can buy night vision. You can buy, you know, thermals. You can, you know, spend some serious money on buying gear. But until you clip that stuff on and you go out and you start putting it to use, you start running the batteries out on it, having to do field change batteries, you know, finding yourself in environments where like, dude, it's so dark. I can't even use my nods right now. What the heck? You know, I got to use my flood, you know, you're actually out putting that stuff to work. That's where you're going to start to really learn. And, you know, hey, I got my plate carrier set up like John Lovell from Warrior Poet Society. Sick, dude. Like that guy's got some experience, but you know, you're 6'5", or you're, you know, or your body's shaped like this or whatever. Like that might not work for you. So
yeah,
you got to get out and try this stuff. That sweet mountaineering backpack you bought, like, that's sick, dude. That's a nice backpack. Get out, throw yourself in the prone, and try to engage those targets.
Something from our last experience.
What'd you learn?
It was just, I mean, it's. I guess I can throw it on the podcast. Why not? But I recently sent my Alice pack out to Tactical Tailor to get turned into basically a Malice that's on an Alice, I guess. Got all the pockets, got some of the new straps and new kidney pad, or not kidney pad, but waistband, waist belt. But because of all those upgrades, I'm not really sure how it's happening, but it is happening. It sits higher on my back now, which is good for actually walking around carrying the weight.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you want, a hiking pack. But when I have all my straps cinched down, like where I like it when I'm walking around, it sits so high that I actually have a really hard time shooting in the prone. Yep. Which
can take a little adjusting then.
Yeah, the Alice pack, that's kind of what the Alice pack has as a, like, that's what I've always liked about it, was that you can shoot in the prone with it on your back.
Yeah.
Because it kind of sits wide and low.
Yep.
Which my pack still can, but what I have to do in order for it to happen is I just have to loosen up my shoulder straps slightly.
Yeah.
And it'll allow it to drop down farther on my back.
Okay.
Which, it's nice because I can carry some weight in that thing right now, and I barely feel it.
Nice.
But I guess for engagement sort of things, if I ever have to go down to the prone, which is usually the place
that's very common. Yeah.
I mean, prone shooting is, if you haven't done much prone shooting, go out and do some prone shooting, because that's where most of your shooting should happen when you're actually getting attacked.
You'll end up in the prone for sure.
Yeah, because you're gonna be scared.
Well, and it's just a natural, like, your body kind of takes over, and you're just like, boom, and you just go down into the prone, and you're more accurate out of the prone. You're way smaller. You're the smallest profile you can be in the prone.
Yeah,
take advantage of cover. All these things. So, but yeah, I mean that's cool though. I mean, exactly. That's something you wouldn't have found out unless you went out. Exactly. It's exactly like what we're saying.
Yep.
These are things you figure out. You can make adjustments.
And I've shot in that pack, like, before I sent it out.
Yeah.
Multiple times in the prone. I actually have videos on my Instagram, me shooting with that pack in the prone.
Yeah.
But that was the first time that I actually, we've done quite a bit of rucking, but that's the first time that I've actually gone okay, I'm going to try to, we weren't
since
actually shooting, but yeah, since I've gotten it back, I haven't actually got the chance to go into the prone with it.
Do you think that's more about the new kidney pad setup or about the pack itself? It's probably not the pack itself. It's probably about because you got new upgraded straps and kidney pad, right?
Yep. Yeah. So it's just the combination of the pad and the shoulder straps, how it sits. Because that pad allows me to take a little bit of the weight out of the shoulders, which I guess I could probably just unsnap the kidney pad and may drop it down. I'll have to play around with that.
I have to try it next time we're out there.
Which might be the way. But yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, put this stuff to work. Bring out all your stuff that you think is super sick and actually try it. If you bought a new helmet and you've got it set up a certain way, go out and smash around in the woods and run around in your house. That's like, that's what my wife always gets she's like, oh my goodness, you're so funny. Cause I'll get new gear and I'll run around my house with it sometimes, Yeah. Like intentionally go in my garage and try to move stuff around and climb around and get in and out of the car. Just weird stuff. That's all it takes is that kind of stuff. Get in your closet and grab some towels and fold them up and put them back in your kit. That sounds random, but it's it's stuff like that that you're
so random.
It's random, but dude, you do that stuff and you're oh man, I'm smashing everything. Stuff's getting stuck on me. And it just gets you used to doing things like that with a bunch of gear on.
Yeah.
Dexterous tasks. in tight quarters. But going out in the woods and putting this stuff to work, running your sling setup, like recently I started playing around with a little bit of a different configuration for my sling with my pack on specifically, and kind of messing around with that. So, there's things that you just figure out, and these are things you want to figure out prior to running and getting shot at and shooting back. So, yeah,
it goes back to that efficiency. You want to just be efficient in everything you do. So the only way you're going to be able to become that is if you actually go out with the gear you own and put it to the test, and you find out, hey, this isn't working for me, or hey, I'm going to need to buy this item because it's going to make this way better for me. Like I'm going to be 100 times faster or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So, or hey, I just need to get out and ruck around because I don't know, my legs are weak.
Get the old big bird legs.
Yeah.
Twigging around. Yeah, honestly, probably start there. I mean, if you haven't done a lot of movement with heavy gear on, dude, throw that stuff on your back and get out there and see where you want it to ride.
Yeah, you can do that anywhere. I mean, me and Jacob there for a while, and we still do it from time to time when we have time, when time permits. But just we throw our rucks on, we go for a ruck march in the morning,
Yep, it's kind of how we start our day.
We invite guys that we work with every once in a while. We even have invited people that we don't really like, just buddies, like, hey, if you want to meet up, we can roll.
Which we might start doing again. We've talked about doing like Friday morning rucks where we send out an open invite and just be like, hey, let's go. So it's time, man. We have a lot going on. We're leapfrogging with like shipments and stuff coming in, like to get holsters done. We have like a ton of holsters that are just awaiting completion, just waiting on
waiting on little things.
Yeah, which sucks. But that's the supply chain right now. So yeah, like we got a bunch of holsters that are basically done. They just have to have stuff put on them, like screws put in them, basically, and then they can get shipped out.
Claws or
hoods.
Yeah, just weird stuff.
Yeah. Or like attachments. Attachments is the big one right now.
Yeah, we're waiting on QLSs right now, which are pretty hard to find right now, weirdly. But
yeah, it's a bummer. So anytime we get that stuff in, it's like everything stops. We got to get in and knock out holsters,
Yep.
So it's that whole thing. But man, on that note, I mean, yeah, you got to do it. Fitness is like so important, and it's probably my biggest weakness, personally. Like I slack on fitness quite a bit, but it's something I still work on it, and it's something I know is really important to work on. But like if you're overweight and you're out of shape, dude, you're in trouble. You're not going to make it.
Yeah,
you're going to be a liability to not only yourself but to your family and to the community. And it's
that mental fortitude can only take you so far. Like.
Yeah.
I think you need to have it, and I think it gives you an advantage. Like, there was times in the military, like, I was not necessarily the, most, fit dude. I was pretty fit in the military, but I wasn't just crazy like some of the guys I served with.
Yeah.
But I'd keep up with them all day long, but that's just because I was, I think, a little bit mentally stronger. I went into my, retard strength.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, but I mean, that stuff is like, you got to have it. And honestly, it might not be a bad idea. This is kind of like random, but it might not be a bad idea to have like fitness requirements for your like team,
Group of guys. Yeah. I don't think that's a terrible idea, or at least give them goals to work toward.
Yeah.
You're not on the team. You just fire people. No, you're not even paying me.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's like anything, you start preparing now, so it's not something you got to worry about later. But yeah, so I think goals is a better way to say that.
Yeah, set goals. I mean, even just go and work out with your guys, set days where you're going to the gym, or you're going on a run, or you're going for a ruck march, or you're, whatever. I mean, It doesn't even have to be the gym. You can do just body weight stuff,
Oh, yeah.
But, I think it's all bonding. Like, I mean, there's a reason why you do all your PT in the military together. Like, there's a reason why they don't just buy everyone gym memberships and say, yeah, go do your thing.
Yeah.
Like it builds camaraderie in that as well as going out and actually doing it with each other.
Yep.
But yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, this, like we said at the beginning, this is going to be something we're going to come back to. Actually, as of right now, we're planning our next episode will be part 2 to this. So we're going to get into some more specifics. Just because this is like we said, this is such a pivotal part of maintaining your area of operation and being proactive about the defense of your community. It's not just about sitting there inside the fence line or inside the wire.
Yeah,
it's about going out there and making it really difficult for an enemy element or a threatening element of some kind to maneuver against you. You got to make it hard. You got to beat them to the punch, so to speak. And this is a great way to do that. So implement it, put it to practice, and make it a part of what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll talk with you guys again soon. Part 2 should be being released a week from now.